truth is the most convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I'll tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
Immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
All right, I'll say it.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
It is Monday, December 16th, 2024, the 1426th day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Think about that number, 1,426. Not anything particular about that number, at least. But we're like 35 days, 34 days away from the 4-year mark, the 4-year anniversary of when that countdown began. That's really something. I never thought we were going to make it this far. I've talked about this before. I definitely thought this strange period would be over faster than it has been, but people love television. So let's talk about what was on television over the weekend. For real on television, Donald Trump showed up at the Army-Navy college football game. We talked about this a little bit on Devolution Power Hour the other night. He let's just go ahead. I'll present a little some of it. Give you a little bit of weekend flavor. College football weekend flavor. That's what we're going to call this episode.
And for the first time in 7 years, the Commander-in-Chief's trophy on the line to whoever wins this one between Navy and number 22 Army. From West Point, here come the Black Knights. With the Apache helicopters overhead. And from only about 25 miles away in Annapolis, the midshipmen of Navy, here they come. The Super Hornet flyover. And we're getting closer to kickoff.
So, Super Hornets, not to be confused with Murder Hornets. Murder Hornets are extremely scary, or at least they were designed to be extremely scary, and they seem extremely non-existent. So, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the rest of the fantasy team, Elon Musk, Mike Johnson, John Thune, the man that we are told will be Senate Majority Leader, all of them attended this Army-Navy football game. Donald Trump attending for the second time as quote-unquote president-elect, the only 2 times a president-elect has ever shown up at the Army-Navy college football game. Navy won 31-13. Army was a very good team all year long, and I guess blew it. So the 17th Commander-in-Chief's trophy was handed out, this time to Navy. That is whatever team out of the 3 military academies, Army, Navy, Air Force, beats both other teams. If a team does that, I guess it's possible that they all, is it possible that they all end up 1-1? I suppose it probably is, although I can't think about that right now. So interesting day. They did a moment where they were showing other military installations around the world where the troops were watching from. And I guess the featured one was Guantanamo Bay. That was interesting, particularly interesting because they had this, Army did, as their uniform for the game. And a lot of people pointed this out as kind of each, like a hangman game. So you got Army ! 7. I'm not saying, just saying. Somebody's got to think that up. Somebody's got to come up with it. Someone's got to get approval on that. Someone's got to then go execute. Then it just so happens to show up at the football game when Donald Trump is arriving as the quote-unquote president-elect. So last week, or the weekend before, not last week, but, the weekend before that. So last weekend, Donald Trump was shown to the world as the king of the world and visited the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral. He was shown as the indisputable leader of the quote-unquote West, to the extent that exists. And maybe the leader of the world, but I guess we'll find out. Then the leader of the economy when he rung in the stock exchange Thursday morning, and now the leader of the military, the commander-in-chief, obviously, giving away the commander-in-chief's trophy. So that was just one of those interesting things that you would think Joe Biden would be attending, except Joe Biden never did do that, did he? He certainly didn't do it yesterday. I don't think he did it at all. I mean, why would Joe Biden go? The closest thing Joe Biden did to something military was go to the return of the caskets from Afghanistan, from the Afghanistan withdrawal, and he spent his time checking his watch. Maybe he was getting his instructions in on an Apple Watch or something. Anyhow, I want to update an important story that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and that was how Ketanji Brown-Jackson was going to become the first Black female Supreme Court justice on Broadway. That childhood dream of hers to become the first ever Black female Supreme Court justice who got on Broadway. She chose as a child to give herself an impossible life, and somehow she has defied the odds and been able to nail that extraordinary childhood dream. Here it is. She is not a biologist. She is also not an actress. Well, actually, she is an actress. She's just having a hard time acting as a good actress.
Empowerment. Sick. I like it too. I think what I like about it is that I am having a very strongly negative reaction to it. Like I hate it. Which makes me think it must be brilliant. Got this feeling.
feeling in my body. Can't stop the feeling. Got this feeling in my body. I can't stop the feeling.
I did it. I made it to Broadway. Come on.
Oh, wow. I watched like 10 seconds of that with the sound off this morning. I was like, I'll just put it on. I had no idea that was going to be that good. Wow. That was amazing. She is definitely acting all the time. And that should be clear because that actually, like, she was 100% committed to that. Let's watch again. Wow.
Female empowerment. Sick. I like it too. I think what I like about it is that I am having a very strongly negative reaction to it. Like I hate it. Which makes me think it must be brilliant.
Got this feeling in my body. Can't stop the feeling. Got this feeling in my body. I can't stop the feeling.
I did it. I made it to Broadway.
All right, man. If you don't think this stuff that we see out in the daily soap opera on TV every day, if you don't think it's bullshit, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, she's coming out to like take a bow. Fully committed, a Supreme Court justice whose life has been committed to the law. Fully committed, in control of her body in dramatic context. Man, oh man. People are saying, Maggie says, once wasn't painful enough. Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be painful. I think it's hysterical. In fact, I thought it got funnier the second time. Man, people got to understand they're getting punked, right? I mean, how long does it take to be like, oh, yeah, we're getting punked? Because then after that is when the more interesting conversations begin. You know, like, how do we get out of being punked? Is it our eternal condition to be punked as slaves? Is that how it's going to go? Can we live dignified lives that way? Or is it incumbent upon us to make our way out of this accursed slavery? Wow, man. Wow. I encourage you, if you are listening audio only, to go to the info stream on Telegram and find them. Just type in Ketanji. Or I encourage you to check out the video version of this show, which you can do on Rumble or YouTube, and watch that video for yourself, because that's not the sort of thing you see every day. Imagine Elena Kagan doing that, and you can't imagine it because it's too ridiculous. Ketanji Brown-Jackson seems like perhaps her number one dream is being on Broadway and acting. Man, who is her agent? That's all I can think now. I'm blown away. I guess we can leave it alone. It's probably not fake. You guys are right. Really is amazing. Okay. Let's move on past Ketanji. Now, we also talked about how Donald Trump was going to annex Canada. And I don't know if we're going to be annexing Canada. I think there's good reason not to want to annex Canada. We don't need a further centralization of government. We don't need to increase the size of our country immediately by 40 million people of a similar but still different and distinct culture, and then hope that we melting pot it all away. there is also, of course, like the French part of Canada, whose culture is quite a bit different than ours. And then, of course, we're talking about Mexico and whatever else. It's kind of absurd. Now, we might be the power player and the leader of North America and this region, but we certainly don't want to make the entire thing one thing, forcing those cultures to mix and become undefined. They're already mixed. It's not like anyone's excluding or being xenophobic. It's not even a concern. It's just, why would we want cultures to merge and become nothing? But I mean, honestly, just the centralization of that is all kind of horrifying. But something's happening. Something is happening there with Justin Trudeau. We're going to hear Klaus say it. And the way Klaus says it is the way it sounds in my head now when I'm not calling him Castro. But he's not the only one having issues. Chrystia Freeland, I have been aware of for a very long time because I used to be a committed listener and viewer of Bill Maher. And I thought that he was very smart and very edgy and talking about all the right things and making them feel moral in a way that I could feel moral about. And it was a little offensive to the most offended people, and it seemed smart to the people you got to disagree with. And now, of course, I understand all of that was retarded, but yeah, Chrystia Freeland used to be on there quite a lot, and she was very present throughout 2020 and 2021 during the very deadly pandemic. She is the Deputy Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau's right hand, probably woman. They were as bad as you could get, at least as far as we can tell, right? People from Canada participate in chats. People have family members back in Canada. It seems like their program overall was more restrictive than that in the United States. But then again, I lived in California and the very blue Austin, Texas, in a state that is not nearly as red as people might expect it to be. But Chrystia Freeland, she's also, by the way, she's also intimately linked to the World Economic Forum, and her father was a Nazi propagandist. Apologies, grandfather. Let me correct myself. And I'll make the machine back it up, because if there's one thing I don't do, it's commit defamation. And we'll talk about Trump's defamation case against George Stephanopoulos in a little bit. But I would never, ever consider defaming any of these people, which is why I'm not. And instead of doing that, I'm going to have the machine back up everything for me. I just told the machine that Chrystia Freeland's grandfather was a Nazi propagandist, and let's see if the machine agrees with me. Oh, I had some typos. Chrystia Freeland's maternal grandfather, Michael Chomiak, was indeed a Nazi collaborator during World War II. He served as the chief editor of Krakivsky Visti. This is the Krakow News, a Ukrainian nationalist newspaper in Nazi-occupied Poland. What? Ukrainian nationals publishing a newspaper in Nazi-occupied Poland. How could it be? The newspaper was established in January 1940 with full support from the German occupation, using printing equipment and offices seized from a Jewish newspaper. Wow. That is. Hold on now, just a second. It's important to note that while Chomiak's actions during World War II are well documented, Freeland herself cannot be held responsible for her grandfather's actions. However, her handling of the information and initial denials have raised questions about transparency and accountability. Wow, she's not fully acknowledged or addressed her grandfather's role. Didn't she go to Ukraine to visit the destruction? She did. Huh. How about that? She went on a tour. Let's see if we can find some good Chrystia Freeland Ukraine tour pics. This looks like it was very professionally shot. How about that? Just leading all these Ukrainians around. Look at these Ukrainian flags. And that does look like some Russian or Ukrainian lettering right there. Good to see some diversity in the crowd, some masking. This picture has it all. Here she is touching Volodymyr Zelensky's shoulder with Justin Trudeau looking on, as he probably does with his wife as well. Sorry, I didn't say that. That's rude. I would never say that about Fidel Castro's bastard. There is Chrystia Freeland looking Hillary Clinton-ish down here with Justin Trudeau. Okay, so we've established that Chrystia Freeland is a former guest of Bill Maher's, is closely linked to the World Economic Forum, is Justin Trudeau's deputy prime minister, is the granddaughter of a Nazi, though that's not her fault, according to the machine. And she also visited Ukraine to touch Volodymyr Zelensky and walk around showing wreckage and leading people down streets. Very, very expert. This lady seems like she probably knows what's going on. Still no word. Oh, hold on. Let's read the headline. I thought I had already done that. This is the Canadian Broadcasting Company. This is exactly the same as the BBC, except focused in Canada. Because, you see, Canada is still a British colony. They don't call them colonies anymore because that word's out of style. They say that they are an independent state among the British Commonwealth. That doesn't mean anything except that they're a colony. If the monarch can have final say over your legislation and who your prime minister is, then you are a colony. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland resigns from Trudeau's cabinet. She says the prime minister told her Friday he no longer wanted her to serve as finance minister. Wow. Rather than accept a job change, Freeland resigned Monday. Did I say deputy prime minister? Maybe she was that at some time, finance minister. Or maybe I just got it wrong. In a letter to Trudeau announcing her resignation, Freeland denounced Trudeau's costly political gimmicks. Like what? Conservative leader Canada's Ron DeSantis, Pierre Poilievre, says Trudeau must call an election right away. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says Trudeau must resign. Asked if he would pull his support for the Liberal government, Singh says all options are on the table. Wow. It's like Justin Trudeau just got broken in half like a little twig by Donald Trump, and now they are trying to undo that as fast as possible. 4 Liberal members of Parliament, including a former minister, also say Trudeau must resign. Fall economic statement will go ahead with no clarity on who will deliver it later today. So maybe that's already happening. Oh, man. I didn't even pull up the article. I'm the worst. How dare I? Here is that article once again. What else do we have here? Freeland's jaw-dropping move to leave just before tabling the economic statement is unprecedented. The statement is supposed to be the government's fiscal roadmap at a time of great uncertainty as Canada stares down President-elect Donald Trump's tariff threat. Oh, yeah. Canada would go under if he did that. In a letter to Trudeau that was subsequently posted to her social media account, the outgoing deputy prime minister, there we go, said she had no choice but to resign after Trudeau approached her Friday about moving her to another cabinet role. On Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in the cabinet. Upon reflection, I have concluded that the only honest and viable path is for me to resign from the cabinet. She took a jab at his handling of the country's economy, denouncing what she called the government's costly political gimmicks and imploring him to work collaboratively with the country's premiers to take on Trump's tariffs. She conceded that she and Trudeau have been at odds in recent weeks. And if I didn't know any better, I would say that Fidel Castro's bastard son had flipped, or maybe he was just a super special double agent this whole time. And if that is the case, well, by golly, we'll all be wearing pink socks soon enough. That didn't sound the way I wanted it. Wait a second. I do have to find this video now. The whole feminist, Justin Trudeau. Oh, man. Oh, come on. Why can't I just find it? There it is. There it is. Sorry about the holding for processing. This video is called Proud Feminist.
Couldn't be that way. It wasn't supposed to be that way. We were supposed to be on a steady, if difficult sometimes, march towards progress. And yet, just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist.
Wow, that is something special. Gosh, that's funny. So maybe this is stupid. I can't help but watch some of these things thinking about, has this dude just been flipped? And now he's just kind of rubbing it in their faces? I mean, the U.S. has gone and decided not to elect its first female president twice now. As if that's going to appeal to Canadians. Now, I know that Canada is gayer and more retarded than even the United States. But that would be absolutely bonkers if they really still had a market for Justin Trudeau standing and saying, I'm a proud feminist, while getting rolled by Donald Trump and Trump talking about how he's going to annex the country. Imagine being a liberal Canadian and all that stands between you and Donald Trump being your overlord was Justin Trudeau and his socks. Man, that would be horrifying. I mean, it would be like if we thought that Joe Biden was really president the whole time and that we were really under threat from Russia and China. Imagine what it would have been like to have to try to get through the last 4 years like that. And people thought we were crazy for denying those things. It's clear that they're not true, so it's good that we denied them. I mean, it kills me when people are like, when's all the stuff you've been saying gonna come true? What do you mean? I've said for 4 straight years, hey, that's not a real president. And now virtually everyone believes it. What could be more complex a prediction than that? They're like, you guys have never been right about anything. All right, cool. I guess. I mean, look what's happening, but I guess if you believe the television, then we're not right with you. I'm with you that far. Now, it's important, as I said, I just want to touch one more thing in this article. Sorry. Got off track there just for a second. So Trudeau, just last week at an event celebrating women in politics, Trudeau said he's a proud feminist and cited his appointment of Canada's first female finance minister. I've touted the adage, add women, change politics, which to us is more than just words. Yep, to us, it's the 19th Amendment. I'm kidding. Am I? Am I kidding? No, but a little bit. 2 days later, Trudeau would ask Freeland to leave that post, effectively pushing out the most senior woman in government. The resignation derailed the fall economic statement and left officials at a media lockup scrambling to figure out what to do after the person who was set to present the statement abruptly quit. That is interesting. Now, economic statements, well, we're definitely not going through all this Canadian bullshit. There's probably some interesting stuff in there, but we're not going to make the whole show about Canada today. What does it mean if Chrystia Freeland is not able to give the economic statement? Does that mean that something about the statement would have been changed and she would be unwilling to give that statement? Hard to see how something like that would happen. Why wouldn't she want to give the statement? She is supposed to be presenting the economic vision. Anyhow, let's look at this video from a clip from the World Economic Forum or one of their related events.
When I mention our names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
So, sorry about the that weird sound interference. That was something with the mics on their end, I suppose, or maybe just something about that clip. He says they penetrate the cabinets of governments all over the world with young global leaders from the World Economic Forum. Now, he said Vladimir Putin was one of those. So did Vladimir Putin get body snatched and switched out? Guess anything's possible. Or he got flipped. Or I guess it's possible that he's still working for the World Economic Forum, though it doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, he's blowing up some of their biggest, most historical and important PSYOP narratives. And maybe this is all just for the sake of the Great Reset. Maybe we're all getting dog walked into the wood chipper. But I don't think so. It would be interesting if the World Economic Forum itself was just some part of this Great Awakening PSYOP. I mean, Klaus released COVID-19, the Great Reset, awfully quickly. All these leaders seem to be maybe they're not turning on anything, right? Maybe it's just that they're leveraged in some way and they're doing what they have to do. Maybe they're being given a script and being told, play this perfectly, or who knows what's going to happen. I don't know, man. There's still a lot of options out there, but you got to consider at least different possibilities, because there's no way that the story we're told by the media makes any sense. Chrystia Freeland bailing out. I guess Justin Trudeau is, they say, considering resignation. But I gotta think that that's not going to happen. And when they make big moves like this, and all sorts of people start calling for the resignation, the trend we've seen is for the people to stick around. I mean, I know that there's been some who've resigned and some who've left. Gosh, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. It's going to be really interesting. This whole Canada thing has me going down rabbit holes, as we discussed last week, but we can move on from that. Let's go across the world to another one of these hot spots where Chrystia Freeland's grandfather would have been, very interested in the events that we are seeing. This right here is an explosion video that came out over. It is about a second and a half of a distant explosion, and then the camera is turned and put away as if this is a Hollywood movie, and the explosion has just reached the person filming the explosion, knocking them over, causing one of those, I don't know, what is that, like a sonic boom wave or something that we see in these action movies? I have no idea what that is actually supposed to represent, that ripple that goes out. Is that how bombs work? Is that how we're told bombs work? Anyhow, I posted about this today. This is impressive to me because this is easily one of the biggest explosions that has ever been on television. And that's what this is, of course. I know you audio people can't watch this, but again, this sort of thing would appear on Telegram and be relatively easy to find on there, or check out the video live stream. But one of the biggest explosions to ever appear on television. There it is. Isn't that amazing? 2 seconds. You're like, wowie zowie. That explosion is one of the biggest explosions I have ever seen on TV. I can't believe how big that explosion is. It's taking up almost my entire TV screen. And it is a very wide column. It's just about as orange as anything you've ever seen. It curves into something resembling a mushroom. It feels nuclear, even though it might not be. Let's see. This, as far as I know, this is the biggest explosion to ever appear on television. And I could be wrong. I'm gonna hope that I'm right, and that this is one of the biggest explosions to ever appear on television. I wouldn't want to lead you guys astray. The explodey sound doesn't come yet. Oh, man. I knew I was going to pick a bad clip. I picked a bad clip. I want the bomb. I mean, that's the whole screen. I think that's got to be the biggest explosion ever on television. And if anybody else out there has bigger explosions on television, by all means, send them my way. But that, as far as I know, in Oppenheimer, that's the biggest explosion I've ever seen on television. This video from this weekend is the second biggest, maybe. And apparently it's supposed to be from Tartus or something over in Syria, a Russian base or near a Russian base. You want to leave some space open in case it wasn't the base. It could have been something near the base and not the base, in case it's not going to work to tell us that it was the base. So right now, it's just a really big explosion on television. Now, was there a big explosion there? Hey, maybe. And this is one of those sticky situations, right? Where you know that the only reason we believe that happened at this base, Tartus in Syria, is because the caption on Telegram says that's what we're watching. But we don't know if that's what we're watching. That could be a piece of video game footage. That could be anything. AI could have created that. And all you got to do is slap a caption on there. People will believe it. You can make up a place in the United States, a base, an army base, have an AI, create a desert, create something that looks like a base, hidden, massive explosion, and then put it out with a little caption, made up base name. I bet it goes viral before anybody says, I don't think that's a real base. And by then it's too late. Yeah, I don't know, man. If people over there witnessed an explosion, then there's probably some tragedy that goes along with what we're seeing. And maybe it's true that there's an explosion, but also not what we're seeing. Those two things can be entirely separate. But there's a chance, of course, that real lives are affected, that people's families are destroyed, they lose loved ones, parents lose kids, kids lose their parents, and all that's very sad. That is a real human tragedy. The problem is we don't know if that happened. And to investigate makes you look like a bad person. How are you so insensitive to these people? Well, how long do we have to be sensitive? A lot of people wasted a lot of time, myself included, checking into 9/11 because it was too important to check into. You couldn't ask the officials for real details because they were too busy telling us why it was necessary to go to war. And that Osama bin Laden and his friends had been playing flight simulator video games, and so they hijacked planes and flew them into towers. Now, a lot of people have questioned various parts of that story over the years, probably every part of that story. And it's still, to a lot of people, not the sort of story that you're allowed to just call a false flag, no matter how much of it is fake, because we know that there are real families affected. And I'm not questioning that because I legitimately knew people who died in the towers. So I don't question any of that. But the false flag and the real kinetic event, the tragic event, the real life human tragedy exists side by side. And so we have to be able to separate those things. And if we refuse to separate those things out of these sensitivities, well, then it's really easy to hoodwink us anytime something is a human tragedy. And the sad thing, of course, is because then we sound like we are insensitive and uncaring. We are ushering in this cruel and harsh world. I would suggest that the cruelest and harshest possible world is the one being created by the people creating these, staging these psyops and using the manipulation, emotional and otherwise, to exploit everyone on this planet. Okay? And so while it may be insensitive, and while family members of affected people and those close to them may find it insensitive, I think it's nonetheless a necessity, or we just don't have like governments and societies and whatnot, you know. But if we're going to have to make decisions on how to guide our lives and who in power can be relied upon to tell us the truth, then we're going to have to be discerning the truth for ourselves rather than deciding who to trust based on personal characteristics, one of which is conforming out of claims to sensitivity. Like, oh, you can't question that. You're going to hurt people's feelings. Imagine if you put those kinds of restrictions on your nation's leaders. How would they be able to make good decisions? Seems obvious right there. And if they can't make good decisions, if whole realms of conversation and thought are cut off based on people's sensitivities, how are we making good decisions? It sucks. I mean, it's one of those terrible things, but I think it's just one of those things about life that we just have to deal with. Sometimes we got to what's the right word for it? Just slog through. It's disgusting. It's distasteful. It's not something that we want to do, but it's got to be done because nobody else is doing it. The people who we have long trusted to tell us what's going on and how we should feel about it, well, it turns out they're the problem, and that activity is the problem. We shouldn't be delegating all of our thought, our intellectual and moral responsibilities to the people on television who tell us what to think. So we have to question these things. And when we question them, we see that all we have is a 2-second long video of an explosion. Look at this. 1002, 1003, 1000. If you grant me that my counting speed was fair, I would say that's about 3.5 seconds of 3.5 seconds of explosion video. Knowing what Hollywood was capable of this year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Consider the AI video generation we are already used to. And then consider that wherever it is relative to our understanding, it is way ahead relative to what the regime has access to. If you just see Hollywood as a propaganda arm of the same regime that controls the finance and controls the military, and you understand that it is just as important to convince the people what to believe so that they will help you implement your program rather than resist it the whole time, then it shouldn't be hard to imagine a scenario where they could create 3.5 seconds worth of explosion video and then slap a caption to it and get everybody to determine certain things about a war in a place we will never, ever visit. It's a lot, man. It really is a lot. And, hey, I hate it. I wish everything was just, and no, I don't even wish this, I don't wish it. We're supposed to figure out how to discern right from wrong, and being resistant to these things is just a leftover portion of the brainwashing. We want to believe that there are good sources of information that will tell us what is going on 10,000 miles away. And maybe there are. I don't know that I would believe there are, but maybe. I have a hard time with these videos. There's just not much there. And, you know, to then say, well, the video might not be real, but let's go see if we can figure out whether or not the video is real. First of all, why? Okay, and we'll come back to why. But second of all, you go in and you start looking for articles. Well, are there articles that say what this explosion was so that we can understand why the explosion would have been so big, and so that we have some multiple perspectives on this thing telling us that the explosion must be real because all of these people are talking about it? That's not necessary. Now, it might be enough because the event might have really happened. It might have just been filmed, right? Not ruling it out. But is that enough to go on? A few news stories along with the video? Now it's enough to go on? Well, no, it can't be because, of course, why would you believe the fake news? Believing fake news in letters on your computer screen is not substantively different than believing fake news on your phone from a caption with an explosion just because the group putting out that video portrays as anti-globalist. Anything that leads us to believing in destabilization and war is a benefit to the global regime. Now, I'm not saying that we just disbelieve everything for that reason, although it's not the worst idea I've ever heard. That's just not an epistemology I'm encouraging. It might be a very effective info war tactic, but I'm not encouraging that as an epistemology. You know, it's not, the idea is not just that we call everything fake because it's bad for the perceived other side. It's that we don't have any reason to believe this. And if we are applying a consistent epistemology across the board all the time, we should always be cognizant of just how easily it is that we could be fooled about something like this. And then we default to not believing it until it's proven. And the truth is, it's not going to be proven. And we can pretty much understand that. It'll probably be forgotten about, maybe by tomorrow, almost certainly by Wednesday. And by Thursday on, this is going to be so funny. Clip this video in case this becomes the biggest story that ever happened. But realistically, by the time Thursday rolls around, no one will ever talk about this explosion ever again. So, I don't know. Is there a great war playing out over there right now? Probably not. My friend Ghost to Base Patrick Henry pointed out online today that he had some analysis on Bashar al-Assad's announcement that he had left Syria and taken refuge, quote unquote, in Russia. He has been, as Ghost said, dark on the comms for 10 days. The first reports of Assad leaving Syria or being, overthrown were from the 6th of December. Today is the 16th. So that's some serious quiet time for a president who is, or a very brutal dictator who is being overthrown. You would think he'd be talking to his people and whatnot, right? I mean, talking to the country, anybody, anything. Isn't there a statement? How does anyone know what's going on? Imagine Donald Trump just disappeared for 10 days. They told us maybe he was leaving. People would lose their shit. And while we're on the topic, it's not totally outside the realm of possibility. And perhaps people should think about it and question whether or not they would lose their shit if that happened. And if you would lose your shit if that happened, you probably got a little too many eggs in that basket. And by the way, I'm not trying to belittle that in any way. I know there are a lot of eggs in that basket for everybody, myself included. So I get it, but This is Kevork Almasian, I guess, part Syrian, or maybe was born in Syria and fled. Ghost could tell you better than I, but he posted today, I previously questioned the legitimacy of Bashar al-Assad's written statement as it was only published on the Syrian presidency's social media accounts, which I thought might have been compromised by the opposition. However, after verifying, I can confirm that Assad changed the passwords and he remains in control of these platforms. Hence, the statement is legit. What? So Assad retains control over the Syrian presidency's social media accounts? I cannot wait to hear more about this. Obviously, it's not a huge priority kind of thing, but there's an interpretation of that right there that begins making it sound a little devolution-ish. Patrick Gunnels and I, we'll talk about it tonight on Hindsight 2020, but this is the week in 2020 that the SolarWinds hack was announced, and it was blamed on Russia and blah, blah, blah. And they accessed all these different government databases. So much was compromised. And then I think it was the day after, or maybe the day before or something, in January of 2021, when it was announced that all of these IP addresses had been shifted to the DOD, and nobody really knew what that meant. But knowing about the problems with Amazon Web Services, we saw a great example with Parler on January 6th, or maybe it was the 7th or 8th, when Parler got shut down back in 2021. And, you know, we recognized Amazon Web Services. They had the ability to be a middleman and kind of snip things off, cut off communications if they wanted to, cut off access. And one of the most important things you could do if you wanted to maintain some data integrity or take away one of their biggest weapons is to essentially move the internet someplace that they couldn't control it. And that's what a lot of this project has been about, of course. And Starlink, we'll see. You know, I get everybody has doubts about people like Elon Musk, and that is totally warranted. Okay? I side with, I think he's a good guy and going to keep watching it like a hawk. But it's totally okay to have doubts. I mean, we're basically just accepting that this is a friendlier, happier military government. The guy who controls all the new technology, maybe the new currency, the quote unquote freedom of speech, all of that is the leading recipient of Defense Department contracts. Now, hey, Donald Trump says he's a good guy. Gotta hope this is all in line with the plan. This is what the plan is. All these people are good guys. It's going to come to fruition. But in the meantime, you got to watch over it. Regardless, if Starlink is what I believe it could be, and people's phones will soon be connecting to Starlink, the idea has always been, it's even the plot of the HBO show Silicon Valley. And I actually asked General Quast about this in one of our Great American Restoration Tour events. I said, this sounds like it's like the plot to Silicon Valley. And he's like, yeah. Peer-to-peer internet so that it doesn't actually live in centralized places, and it's decentralized at every point and in every way. And maybe that's where we're going. I don't know. Maybe there's some level of centralization that's necessary. But if they were able to take the information, the big information, right, the whole cloud, and move it outside of the grip of the regime and the control or the access, right? It's not only that they can't control it, it's that they can't even get the information anymore. That provides a pretty incredible advantage. And I hope that that's what's happened. I'm optimistic that that's what's happened. But when he makes this statement about Syria, To my ear, that's what it sounds like. He changed the passwords and still has access to their accounts. Well, what's going to happen? Is he still in charge of the government or not? Trump has spent the last 4 years at the Winter White House and Bedminster, which is like another White House. There's some strange stuff going on, and I think it's because we are continually being shown a false reality, and every now and then, and more these days, the base layer, the reality prime layer, begins showing through and peeking through that layer of falsehood. And so, man, I think that's what's going on. It's all very interesting. It's all developing, you know. So right now it's just look out for these things, look out for these things. Why would we want to make any declarative statements about knowing what's happening over there? It's so weird, the approach that people have had to information throughout our lifetimes. And again, I was exemplary of this not that long ago. I hope that I don't do it now, but I'm sure that I do sometimes. The idea that everybody is certain what's going on, that they have been able to figure out which version of the fake news, which combination of aspects fits just right, that they get to be the most right out of everybody. It's so strange to me. All of the fake news is an exercise in convincing you that you should believe some version of something they want you to believe. Because if you adopt that belief, you'll act in certain ways or support certain things or allow certain things to occur that advance their agenda. So the default should always be, these people are just lying to me again, right? You don't have to know. You just have to know that they're lying to you. How are they lying? Well, we could try to figure it out. You might not need to figure it out. In a lot of cases, just knowing that they're lying is enough. Because you're like, why would I care about this if I know that they're constantly lying? And that's a good question. Okay, so let's take just 1 second. I'm going to check in the chat. And then I want to get to Donald Trump's press conference today, because I think it's really, really interesting. And I don't know if we're going to get all the way through it. And I kind of doubt that we will. But I watched his initial 25-minute statement and whatnot. And then once I'm going to start with the press conference. It gets interesting right away. I don't know. Maybe he answers questions for the full hour. I've watched, 20 minutes or so of it. We're going to get through as much of that as we can, but let me just scroll through here, check the chat, see if everybody's hanging in there and doing okay. All right. Well, good. Okay. So, by the way, thank you all who are beginning to tune in to this on Rumble. It's nice to see. Don't know what we're going to do going forward with the format, but probably till the end of this year, it's going to be like this. And then we will see what I want to do with it. But let's listen to Donald Trump today. Yeah, so I listened to about 15 minutes of the press conference after his 25 some odd minute statement. So let's start it right about here. I think this is about where the press conference begins. And I'm going to do this at 1.25. Hopefully that's fast enough.
But he was very much involved in the call. But it was a recap call more than anything else.
How do you plan to stop the ban on TikTok next month?
Who?
How do you plan to stop the ban on TikTok next month?
We'll take a look at TikTok. I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because...
Now, to be clear, she just said, how are you going to stop the ban of TikTok next month? Trump was the one who put the TikTok quote-unquote ban in place in 2020. They were either going to have to be divested from ByteDance or they were going to get banned from the app stores. And Then the Congress tried to do all this in the spring, and Trump reversed his position and is now the guy who's going to save TikTok. So he's explaining.
I won youth by 34 points. And there are those that say that TikTok has something to do with that. Now, Joe Rogan did, and some of the other people that were recommended by my son Barron, he knew names. I said, who is that? Tell me, who's that? Dad, you got to be kidding. I can't believe you don't know. And I did those interviews, and it was actually sort of cute. Do you want to know the truth? But we did them, and that had an impact. But TikTok had an impact, and so we're taking a look at it. But, you know, we won youth. Republicans are always 30 points down in youth. I don't know why, but we ended up finishing. There was one poll that showed us down about 30. We were 35 or 36 points up with young people. So I have a little bit of a warm spot in my heart, I'll be honest. Yes.
So kind of interesting. We're going to see what happens with TikTok. We got, again, 35 days till we have some more clarity on that. I suppose we'll probably start hearing hints about that after the new year. Tomorrow, by the way, is the Electoral College certification process. I still have a feeling we're going to hear something, but maybe not, man. Maybe that opportunity is just out the window. And it's good if it is. But the TikTok thing is going to be interesting. Reasserting that he's got the youth vote. I don't think there's a whole lot of signal there, but I am looking forward to seeing that in the new year. Okay, so we talked TikTok. Donald Trump also, the entire, I should have said this at the beginning, but the entire purpose of this press event initially was to present a business deal that he has closed with a man named Masayoshi Son he is the CEO of Softbank. And here was very interesting exchange between the two of them. They seem to have a good deal of mutual respect, but Trump was also kind of putting the pressure on a little bit. Here we go. This is the exchange today before the press conference.
To go, and we were discussing, and President Trump said, Masa, double down is not enough. Maybe, go for more, right?
That's what I'm going to ask him right now. Would you make it $200 billion instead of he can actually, believe it or not, he can actually afford to do that. Would you do that?
Well, my promise is 100, but, he's now asking to do more. I think, with your leadership, my partnership with you, with your support, I will try to make it happen.
That's good.
All right.
200. He'll make it happen. 200 billion investment.
He is a great negotiator.
He's a brilliant guy and did an unbelievable job, and the people of Japan and all over the world are very proud of him. They have tremendous respect for him. So when he does what he just did, and I would be surprised if it didn't go to 2. When you say you'll try, I know you'll do it.
I will really try.
I mean, he just manhandled a man who can get $200 billion for the United States of America. That's a lot of money. Where is that money coming from? You're just investing? This is Reuters today. Trump SoftBank CEO announced a $100 billion U.S. investment in echo of 2016 event. Trump said the investment was evidence of monumental confidence in America's future. He playfully encouraged Son to make the investment of $200 billion. Son chuckled and said he would try. While he's talking about the $50 billion from 2016 and 50,000 jobs. While that money was eventually spent, it is unclear whether those jobs were created. The company has been rebuilding its finances after the failure of high-flying office-sharing startup WeWork, and after some of the tech firms it invested in through its Vision Fund unit fell out of favor among investors. Trump has an affinity for splashy announcements promising thousands of jobs, even though such investments do not always pan out. Early in his first term, he announced a $10 billion investment by Foxconn in a Wisconsin factory that promised thousands of jobs that was mostly abandoned. Was that totally abandoned? I don't think it was totally abandoned. It is unclear how Softbank plans to fund the new investment. As of September 30th, Softbank had about $29 billion in cash and cash equivalents, according to its most recent earnings report. After a sharp decline in shares between 2021 and 2023, its stock has recovered, gaining nearly 50% to date. Man, this is the stuff right here. And Trump mentioned this in his remarks, talking about AI and the next wave of technology. Sun has been a strong proponent for the potential of AI and has been pushing to expand SoftBank's exposure to the sector, taking a stake in OpenAI and acquiring chip startup GraphCore. In October, Sun reiterated his belief in the coming of artificial superintelligence, saying it would require hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. And so Trump made it clear that this is kind of a big piece, I should say, of the basis for the investment. And let me just see on the YouTube here if I'm able to find Trump's comments about the AI. I would love to be able to do that. Man, it's going to be too difficult, I think. Hold for processing. Yeah, here we go. Actually, it's early on. Let's just start back here at the beginning and we can hear Trump announce this.
Our country since the election, and many other people are also coming in with tremendous amounts of money. You probably noticed that a poll was just taken. It's business is literally in 39 years, there's been nothing like it. It's been the biggest increase. Small business owners gave it a 41% jump. It's the biggest jump that we've had in 39 years. And nobody's ever seen anything like it. And it's just they're very optimistic. This historic investment is a monumental demonstration of confidence in America's future, and it will help ensure that artificial intelligence, emerging technologies, and other industries of tomorrow are built, created, and grown right here in the USA. One of the beautiful things about Masa is he's very much involved with emerging technology, probably knows it maybe better than almost anybody. So it's a great honor. And some of you remember after the 2016 election, also SoftBank committed to invest $50 billion in our country, and they did. And I'm very pleased to say that they kept that promise in every way, shape, and form. And now they're looking to do 100. And I've looked at their books. They do have the possibility of doing more. I'm going to ask them to do a little bit more. But first, I'm going to ask them to speak and just to say a few words. Masa, please. Thank you.
Very interesting. So emerging technologies, he's going to ask him to give more. He makes it clear that he's got the upper hand in all of this. Very interesting where this money could be going or what comes along with this money. Whenever we're talking numbers like that and with the look of some level of coercion or leverage there, I have to at least wonder if we're talking about some sort of drainage venture. WeWork was one of those kind of, I remember them being pretty woke. I actually used to work out of a WeWork for a year or so back in 2017. And it certainly seemed to be going very mainstream social media, and mainstream social media at the time was the whole woke thing. All of that culture, it's intertwined, and that company failed spectacularly. I really wonder what's going on here. And the ChatGPT thing as well, that kind of seems like one of those Twitter, TikTok equivalents. Elon Musk goes hard against it, and then it gets pulled back into the fold somehow. Man, we live in such a strange world. It's fascinating every day. Or, hey, maybe we're just all watching the soap opera. Let's continue with Trump.
Up with young people. So I have a little bit of a warm spot in my heart, I'll be honest. Yes,
President,
Are you entertaining the idea of preemptive strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities? Against Iran's nuclear facilities?
I mean, it's a wonderful question, but am I going to do preemptive strikes? Why would I say that? Can you imagine if I said yes or no? You'd say, that was strange that he answered that way. Am I going to do preemptive strikes on Iran? Is that a serious question? How could I answer a question like that?
I love that answer. It's a great answer. It's hilarious that he asked that question. They've been trying to gin up a narrative war now for, of course, years in general, but specifically these last few weeks. And Trump's not taking the bait at all. Instead, he's throwing it right back in their faces. There were reports that so Trump and Netanyahu talked over the weekend, said they had a very nice conversation. And there were reports that Trump told Netanyahu he'd be open to preemptive strikes against Iran to avoid Iran attacking Israel. Because, of course, never again, right? We always have to hit them over there so that we don't have to fight them over here. It's that kind of logic, that neoconservative logic, where everything that they identify as a problem is going to be the next Holocaust. And so in order to avert the next Holocaust, they're going to have to go to war with everybody. It's the same way that they're saving democracy by making sure no one ever votes again. They're going to make sure we don't go to world war by going to world war first, by being the reason the world war happens. Well, if we don't get to start a world war, there's going to be a world war. These people are insane. And Donald Trump is the first president who doesn't take this sort of bait. I mean, this question in the past always would have been answered. And imagine this question, and we saw stuff that wasn't far off from this, by the way. Recall the 2023 and 2024 fake primary debates in the GOP between Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley and Chris Christie and Tim Scott and Mike Pence and based Vivek Ramaswamy, Doug Burgum. Who else do we have in these ridiculous affairs? Ask them some sort of question about foreign policy, and they'll tell you how they're going to do the strongest thing. Oh, I'll tell you what, they better not even think about bombing. Trump never says what he's going to do, because why would any world leader ever say what they're going to do just because a reporter asks for it? He's trying to avert war. Man, we've seen this so many times in the last 8 or 9 years, and I hope that the people watching this have caught on and are like, oh, yeah, that's the right thing. That's obviously the right thing. He can do those I mean, unless we're going to negotiate these things in public, I guess I could be open to it. Let's keep going.
Say it.
In support of Israeli strikes on Iran.
How could I tell you a thing like that now? It's just so you don't talk about that before something may or may not happen. You know, just I don't want to insult you. I just think it's just not something that I would ever answer having to do with there or any other place in the world.
Can I ask, just clearly, do you believe there's a connection between vaccines and autism? Do you believe there's a link?
Well, I don't look right now. You have some very brilliant people looking at it. I had dinner the other night with the head of Pfizer, the head of Eli Lilly, and RFK, as you know, and Oz. And we had, and other people within the administration that are involved, medical. And we're looking to find out, if you look at autism, So 30 years ago, I've heard numbers of like 1 in 200,000, 1 in 100,000. And now I'm hearing numbers of 1 in 100. So something's wrong. There's something wrong. And we're going to find out about it.
What about
So that's the first in a series of questions here about RFK Jr. and the vaccines. And all of these answers are very interesting. He leaves open the possibility that vaccines cause autism. And of course, we're going to continue to get more information on that as time goes on. I don't think that Donald Trump has to blast down all of these himself all the time. He's got to allow things some room to develop. He said the necessary things before. He was saying these things on Twitter 12 years ago. If anyone was confused in 2020 and 2021, and obviously since, about Donald Trump's stance on vaccines, why wouldn't you just look back at the stance on vaccines he's had for the last 12 years? And oh, by the way, he gave every reason why no one should be scared of COVID or take the vaccine in 2020. And people still blame him for it, which is, an op, and also people failing to take responsibility for their own decisions and the decisions of other people around them. I have people who took the vaccine. I'm not happy that they did it, but it's them that did it. Trump didn't make them take it. Let's continue.
Can I follow up on Robert Kennedy? He's on the Hill today. He's meeting with senators. What do you say to people who are worried that his views on vaccines will translate into policies that will make their kids less safe?
No, I think he's going to be much less radical than you would think. I think he's got a very open mind, or I wouldn't have put him there. He's going to be very much less radical. But there are problems. I mean, we don't do as well as a lot of other nations, and those nations use nothing. And we're going to find out what those problems are. And another thing that came up at dinner was fascinating because I had Bobby and I had, again, the head of Pfizer. You know who that is. He's a highly...
Let's pause it right there, actually, and we'll come right back to that. But the thing I wanted to note in there is that Donald Trump, many times throughout the quote-unquote campaign at his rallies for years now, he has said that he is going to cut federal funding for any school or university that puts in place mask mandates or vaccine mandates. And if that's the case and the federal funding would end, then those schools would probably immediately stop enforcing the childhood vaccine schedule. They wouldn't be able to do it because they can't really survive without the federal funding. So that's a perfect leverage point that he's able to do on his own without dealing with the medical community or pharma or anything else. Just stop federal funding unless they get rid of the mandates. Now, that's not a good enough solution, okay? But it's a good start. And at that point, without the pressure to get kids vaccinated, parents probably aren't going to do it. He's saying, one of the communists in the journalism industry just asked, well, what about the parents who are scared of health consequences for their children if other kids stop getting vaccinated? And that's the logic. And I used to find this logic compelling. Like, we need herd immunity, right? And so if all these kids stop getting the vaccine, then they won't be immune. Ultimately, eventually, you will be under that herd immunity threshold. And now all the kids are potentially subject to one of these deadly diseases like measles that's largely gone away. Now, I would assume that measles is actually caused by pharma products or something in our food, and that the vaccine has absolutely nothing to do with people not getting it. So you can move that aside. And then the herd immunity threshold is all nonsense. And regardless of any of that, no kid should be forced to inject no parent should be forced to inject their kids with some potentially deadly or debilitating substance that can't protect them from a disease that can't kill them on some other kid's behalf. And, we can be caring about all the people, but all the people should be making self-interested decisions and letting everybody else do the same. And if you can't do that, then you got a much bigger problem. You got a much bigger problem than measles. And your solution's not good enough. Man, oh man. I hope you guys are getting a decent feed out there. One of my little internet monitor things makes it seem like my feed's not all that good. I hope that we're doing okay. Let us continue. Oh, point being, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. probably doesn't need to do anything that radical, the same way that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy don't need to actually take down government agencies. The Supreme Court decisions have already allowed for that. In the same way, Donald Trump taking away federal funding, if schools are mandating that their kids sign up for medical experiments in violation of the Nuremberg agreements, by the way, then there's no need for RFK Jr. to go through the whole process of this getting taken down in a legal way. The program would just end. I would think right now, with how few parents ultimately kept getting their kids COVID vaccines, that stuff's just going to be gone. And there's at least some indication right now that they're trying to pull off another very deadly pandemic, or maybe a combination of very deadly pandemics at once. We shall see. I genuinely cannot imagine that that's going to work this time around. But at some point, the people are going to have to make decisions to stand up for themselves. And I'm not entirely certain that they're going to do that. But I'm hopeful.
Respected man who has run an incredible company, likewise with Lilly, the top two people. And we had the head of the industry also. So all companies were represented. And I said, let's have it out now a little bit. And you know what came out of that meeting is that we're paying far too much, because we're paying much more than other countries. And we have laws that make it impossible to reduce. And we have a thing called the middleman. You know the middleman, right? The horrible middleman that makes more money, frankly, than the drug companies. And they don't do anything except they're a middleman. We're going to knock out the middleman. I'm going to be very unpopular after that statement.
Mr. President. We're going to knock out the middleman. I'll be very unpopular after that statement. Now, that is very reminiscent of a speech that Donald Trump gave at the end of the first term, where he talked about going away for a while and people being out to get him. And I mentioned hindsight 2020 earlier. This was the week in 2020 when Donald Trump did the most favored nations policy. So what we have here is another example of something that was done in Trump's first term that we were told Joe Biden reversed, and now we're hearing it again. He's talking about getting rid of the middleman in order to bring down the prices. And he's saying, well, the drug companies would make the same amount of money, but the middleman's money would go away. And so that would bring down prices for everyone. And then the same pressures would not be there. And maybe this is part of an answer. Okay, I wouldn't suggest that this is a full answer. I would suggest that there's accountability to come for pharma companies. And I would suggest that it is necessary for people to understand that you can't just go plugging things in your arm every time the TV says that some virus is flying around. But I have to wonder if he's talking about the drug cartels there. And the middleman, we've talked about this before with Afghanistan and the United States military protecting and our intelligence community ultimately, protecting opium fields in Afghanistan. All of that, we're told, the world's leading producer of opium is selling it all on the black market, while the other countries that are leading producers of opium are selling it to big pharma. Afghanistan, the one controlled by the U.S. military, whoops, it's all getting onto the black market. But everywhere else, the opium supply goes to pharma. That doesn't make sense. Is that the middleman? Are the cartels the middleman? And is it just that some amount of it gets pushed to pharma and some amount gets pushed out onto the streets because that creates its own criminal environment, destabilizes communities, destroys homes, catches other people up in the problems, makes it possible to have people around who can commit murders, hits anytime. That's what we're told happened with Seth Rich. It's really quite the web. And I think that that's what he's talking about. Let's watch it. Let's watch just a few seconds of that over again, because I just thought, what an interesting answer he gave here.
Than the drug companies, and they don't do anything except they're a middleman. We're going to knock out the middleman. I'm going to be very unpopular after that statement.
Mr. President. I'm going to be very unpopular after that statement. Polymath says the Whirlpool speech. And yeah, let's see if we can, let me pull that up. Let me see. We'll hold for processing for a second. I don't know if this is going to work, but I hope that I can find this really quickly. So Trump went and gave a speech at the Whirlpool factory talking about, here we are, the full remarks. So let's go over here. Hold for processing. I'm actually going to take a look at this transcript and see if I can find it first. Actually, I'll pull this up so you all can see this. For anybody who hasn't seen it before, this is how to find spots on YouTube, okay? You go in the description. In the description, it usually is like this. You hit more, you go down, show transcript. Transcript pops up over here. Sometimes there's a search feature in the transcript, and other times you can just use your browser's search feature, which on Apple is Command F. Let's see if I can find Trump saying favored. Okay, great. Found it. Now, you'll also remember that Donald Trump was part of the decoupling from China. Part of that agenda was to re-onshore American pharmaceutical manufacturing. And they were going to do it down in Puerto Rico. And the Democrat Communist Party, the regime in general, was very upset about this. And they tried to go after Donald Trump vis-a-vis Puerto Rico multiple times, including after the first term had ended. But the plan is to bring pharmaceutical manufacturing to Puerto Rico, which puts it right off, very, very close, so that the United States can closely monitor. It's not coming in from across the world, nothing with trade routes. Doesn't matter that our adversaries are producing it. It's just right here in Puerto Rico. Makes their economy better than it's ever been. All very good stuff, but that was 2020. Let's check in here. This is the Whirlpool factory speech. President Trump, this says August 6th, 2020. So this happened a little earlier than I remembered.
Manufacturing achievements, and these are incredible. They'll be the foundation of an even brighter future for American industry. What we've been able to do in a short period of time is frankly incredible. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the people out there. What they've done is incredible, including the military and some of the generals and admirals, the job they've done. My third promise is to build on these gains to turn America into the premier medical manufacturer, pharmacy, and drugstore of the world. As we've seen in this pandemic, the United States must produce essential equipment, supplies, and pharmaceuticals for ourselves. We cannot rely on China and other nations across the globe that could one day deny us products in a time of need. We can't do it. We can't do it. We have to be smart. And speaking of pharmaceuticals, we instituted 4 moves, rebates, favored nations, and other things, buying from other nations where they have the product, the same exact pill, identical, made in the same factory, for a fraction, just a small fraction of the cost we buy from other countries, as opposed to buying through this ridiculous quagmire of political scam that we've been going through for many years. And what I've done in terms of favored nations, if, as an example, Germany has a pill for 10 cents and we have a bill for $2, we institute favored nations on the drug company, we get the pill for the same amount as the lowest pill anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. And that could drop your price of pharmaceuticals, of drugs, prescription drugs, could drop your price 50, 60, 70%, maybe more than that. This is something. Now, I have to tell you, I have never seen so many bad commercials about me as in the last 3 days since I did this. So will you remember that when you see this horrible commercial that I'm a socialist? I was called a socialist for the first time in my entire life. Actually, what I am doing is I'm using socialist countries who are buying our product for far less than we're allowed to. I'm saying, well, if you're going to sell it to this country, might be socialist, for a lower price, then we're going to get that same price. So, but I have been called everything in the book. And I said the other day, whenever you see a drug company advertising that Donald Trump's a bad guy, remember, your drug prices must be coming down very big. Very big. So please remember that. Please remember that, because I don't want to get all those negative votes and then Biden wins and they first month he'll say, I dropped drug prices 78%, and he won't even know what the hell he's saying. I don't want to be watching that from some beautiful resort someplace in the world. I could have, I had such a beautiful.
And hold on, here we go. Here's the middleman. Great. I'm so great. I'm so glad. I'm so great. I'm so glad that we came back here to this. Thank you for sparking that fire, Polymathodon. This is what a fantastic speech. So this is kind of the bookend of this speech. Today, he is giving us that bookend. And man, I'm going to pull up my hindsight doc for later for the show tonight, because we're going to talk about a little bit of this then too. So the vaccine was approved for the EUA on, I think, the 16th of December. Trump went off about how it would have been 5 years. He said 5 years ahead of schedule, we're getting that vaccine. So that would be next year, next winter. It's coming at the end of 2020 rather than the end of 2025. Imagine what they would still be doing. Now, again, no fan of the vaccine, but come on, man. Could you imagine being still locked down and them having a justification for why it was necessary to be locked down? I don't know if that's what the original plan was going to be, but he's saying it's 5 years. This was Trump on December 13th, 2020. So we're talking about almost an exact 4-year difference here, delta, if you will. The drug companies are going crazy, putting up nasty ads against me, asking to withdraw my favored nation's executive order. They don't want the U.S. to have the lowest drug prices in the world, but we now will. Big reductions coming. No other politician would do this. And he is repeating that today. And then he responds here about the middleman. Let's go here. I think I'm going to call today's episode The Middleman.
Often in the same plant. It's a disgrace. And the politicians allowed this to happen for many, many decades. You have people called middlemen. I don't know who the middlemen are. I don't know. They never say middle women, so they're politically not correct. But I've heard the term middlemen for a long time. They are so wealthy. They are so wealthy. Nobody has any idea who the hell they are, what they do. They make more money than the drug companies. In all fairness, at least the drug companies have to produce a product. It has to be a good product. But the middlemen, well, the rebate that I'm doing cuts out the middlemen and it reduces costs, and the money goes back to the people purchasing the drugs. So I have a lot of enemies out there. This may be the last time you'll see me for a while. A lot of very, very rich enemies, but they are not happy with what I'm doing. But I figure we have one chance to do it, and no other president's going to do what I do. No other president would do a favored nations, a rebate, a buy from other nations at much less cost. Nobody. And there are a lot of unhappy people, and they're very rich people, and they're very unhappy. Here's my fourth promise to American workers. Beyond
Now, there are some middlemen out there apparently who are not happy with Donald Trump. And who could the middlemen be? He's saying quite clearly that it's not the pharma companies. Now, I'm no fan of the pharma companies, but we're just going to have to leave them aside for a moment. It could be the cartels, could be the insurance companies. I don't know who else it could be. Are there other middlemen in the process of getting prescription drugs to patients? Doctors? Could it be the doctors? I don't think it's the doctors. It could be the doctors. I don't know. Maybe there's someone out there with some experience. Maybe it's the psychiatrists. I suppose that's possible, that it's primarily about the mental health drugs, but it can't be only about them. It's got to be cancer too, right? God, man, the insurance companies. I'm going insurance companies or cartels. If you guys have a feeling on who it is, maybe I'm wrong. If someone wants to tell me that there's someone else it could be, I'm totally open to suggestions. But it seems like cartels or insurance companies. Let's continue with Trump from today. I actually have to put it on the screen.
These middlemen are, but they are rich as hell. And we're going to knock out the middlemen. We're going to get drug costs down at levels that nobody has ever seen before. And that really, I tell you, we spent more time talking about that with Bobby and with the executives and Oz, all of them. We spent more time talking about that than anything else.
Thanks, President Trump. What about the polio vaccine?
Well, I'm a big believer in it. And I think everything should be looked at, but I'm a big believer in the polio vaccine, the Salk vaccine.
Do you think schools should mandate vaccines? Do you think schools should mandate vaccines?
I don't like mandates. I'm not a big mandate person. So, I was against mandates. Mostly Democrat governors did the mandates, and they did a very poor thing. It was, in retrospect, they made a big mistake having to do with the education of children. They lost like a year, 2 years of their lives. The mandate was a bad thing. I was against the mandate.
So is that something you want to...
Yes, please.
Do you expect Ron DeSantis to appoint...
Sorry. So that's really something. We know about the mandate thing. Trump was always opposed to the mandates and has said that he will, like I said, defund any school, take away the federal funding for mask or vaccine mandates. But she also asked about the polio vaccine. And the polio vaccine, I guess, is like the litmus test for whether or not you're at least bare minimum passable on vaccine support. You have to say that the polio vaccine was good and wiped out polio. I guess people are not prepared to hear that they were just getting poisoned and then they stopped being poisoned in the same way and started getting poisoned in a different way. And then they were told that the new way they were getting poisoned stopped the old way of getting poisoned. So if they're poisoning the water or poisoning the food supply or messing with an energy field or something, and I don't know if that's possible, but I kind of feel like it might be. Okay. I'll say the 5G interference thing, man, I don't know. I just don't know. It makes sense to some degree. And how am I supposed to know? But if they did that, and that was what, quote unquote, COVID was, when I had, quote unquote, COVID, I got it from people who had just been vaxxed. This was in the Omicron phase. And it felt like a Herxheimer reaction, which is just, it's a set of symptoms that come when you're doing like a parasite cleanse. So who knows what that means? I can't say for sure. But if there was something that was poisoning people and they were told in order to cure this thing, to cure these symptoms that we are calling this disease, you need to take this shot, and then people get that shot and the shot gives them or destroys their immune system. So they get all of these other diseases. And then everyone says, well, the shot's not to any of those diseases, and the shot didn't cause any of those diseases, of course, because those diseases were already around. Well, okay, but did the shot destroy everybody's immune system? Did it make them have all of these various reactions that represent as all of these diseases that we've had before? And should we now, there's a massive portion of our population that believes the COVID vaccine actually did something toward curing COVID. And I mean, I guess narratively speaking, it did, which is obviously a different conversation. But physically, there's no reason to believe that the shot that everyone took, that many people had terrible reactions to, did anything to cure any disease. And the disease that it would have cured would have been something that they also caused. So could the polio vaccine be exactly like that? Yeah, it absolutely could be exactly like that. And I hope that Trump and RFK Jr. are walking society down from the dependence on vaccines. A lot of people think, like hypochondriacs and whatnot, people who think that that they're just always going to die. Everybody's always going to die. Everyone's going to get hurt. Their risk tolerance is basically zero. They want everything to be sterilized around them. They're germaphobes, etc. They want vaccines to work because vaccines then seem like man's ability to conquer part of this unknown that's going to cause their death. Death in the scariest way imaginable to them is preventable if they just give over enough control to the pharma companies and support the vaccine agenda. And so it becomes existential for these people. They'll just never let it go. If we're getting walked down so that those people even might have an off-ramp, I could see it going something like this. We heard Peter Hotez a couple of weeks ago in that really weird clip talk about potentially polio coming back. So it's no mistake that they're asking him about the polio vaccine. And if it gets to that point, that's a fight we're going to have. It's a fight we're going to have to win. It's all good. But you can't just assume that Donald Trump's going to do it. People are going to have to stand up and speak for themselves and be like, all right, guys, yeah, come on. No, I'm sorry. I know that I said 2 years ago that the polio vaccine was probably good. And I've said, yes, not all vaccines are bad. I'm sure that there are some good vaccines. This just doesn't happen to be one. It's going to have to be, no, guys, it's all vaccines. These are not what we were told they were. And they might not all be causing immediate death, but we don't know what else they might be causing. Autism down the road. Autism in a generation. Is autism being caused by 2 generations ago being given the polio vaccine? Now, I'm not suggesting that that's what it is. I'm just suggesting that the proliferation of vaccines over generations, who knows how much breast cancer was caused in that generation, in kind of the baby boom generation, by the introduction of all these various medications, by the polio vaccines, etc. Who knows how many people were killed as a result of those vaccines, and no one knows it because everybody was too busy celebrating the vaccine and how polio, which a lot of people understand as DDT poisoning, was eradicated. And I think that Donald Trump understands that all of this context exists around these issues, and I think that he's speaking with that context in mind. Evandor says they can create polio-like illness with neurological toxins, DDT, pesticides, vaccines themselves. There we go. Yes, I agree. He also said maybe the middleman is, in fact, the regulatory agencies who accept bribes and approve massively criminal products for use and mandate upon the population, eliminate the regulatory agencies. You have made an excellent point. That is an excellent possibility. You might even be in first place against my two possibilities of the cartels and the insurance companies. The regulators. Could be. Okay, let's continue with Trump.
Laura Trump to Senator Marco Rubio's seat?
No, I don't. I probably don't, but I don't know. Ron's doing a good job. That's his choice. Nothing to do with me. Laura's unbelievable. I mean, she was incredible. The job she did at the RNC, chairman, along with Michael Whatley, the combination. But I can just speak for Laura. She is so highly respected by women. I mean, even her workout routines are through the roof. She lifts 150 pounds. I don't know how the hell she does it. She's a bad example for men and women sports because I wouldn't be able to beat her, I don't believe. I'd try like hell. But no, she's an incredible woman. And, you know, it's funny. People oftentimes talk about nepotism. I never had, when I put her there, people said, how did you get her to do it? You know, she could have run for the Senate in North Carolina. Ted Budd would be the first to say, and he wouldn't have run. Nobody would have run. And she just said, no, I want to really focus on my children. When the election, and my family, she has a great family. When the election started getting closer, I asked her, would she go to Washington and work on the, as chairman of the committee along with Michael Whatley. And they did such an unbelievable job, especially on cheating. They stopped it, or at least they stymied it. Too big to rig. And we won in a landslide. You know, we won tremendously. She did an amazing job. Now Ron is going to have to make, because Marco has been really a star already, and we haven't started, but you know, we see signs of from some people, or very early, we see signs of stardom, and Marco has done incredibly. He's sort of born for it. It was such an easy decision. The Marco decision was such an easy, but he leaves a vacancy in Florida, and Ron's going to have to make that decision, and he'll make the right decision. I also know that Laura's got so many other things. I mean, she's got so many other things. People want her to be on television. They want to give her contracts. You know, her predominant thought is our country and her family. Those are her thoughts. But she's got so many other things that she's talking about. He'll make the right decision.
That is an interesting answer, especially when you consider that just a week or so ago, Ron DeSantis was put forward by the Wall Street Journal and supposedly people connected to Trump's transition as the potential replacement for Pete Hegseth as the defense secretary nominee. And people thought maybe Ron would be named there in exchange for Laura Trump being named the Florida senator. You got to wonder what machinations are going on in the background and which of those Donald Trump is choosing to expose. And hey, man, maybe he really believes that Ron DeSantis is doing a great job in Florida and he's not going to give him any advice about who he chooses. And all of this is just straight up and he doesn't expect it to be Laura Trump. Maybe Laura Trump held out there as a potential Florida Senate appointment was to see how the rest of the negotiations would go. Wouldn't put it past him. Very interesting. Let's continue.
Senators who oppose your nominees, your cabinet nominees, should they be primary?
If they are unreasonable, I'll give you a different answer, an answer that you'll be shocked to hear. If they're unreasonable, if they're opposing somebody for political reasons or stupid reasons, I would say it has nothing to do with me. I would say they probably would be primary. But if they're reasonable, fair, and really disagree with something or somebody, I could see that happening. But I do believe that if they're I think we have great people. I think we have a great group of people. Pam has been unbelievably received. Take a look, Pam Bondi. So many have been just unbelievably received. I think Pete Hegseth is making tremendous strides over the last week. He's going to be great. Look, he went to Princeton. He went to Harvard. He was a great student there. But he really was, from the first day I met him, all he wanted to talk about was military. He's just a military guy. I think it's a natural. This was my idea. And, you know, Pete Hegseth gave up a lot because he was going big places in Fox, big places, a lot of money. And he didn't even hesitate. When I said, do you want to do this? He said, absolutely. I said, you know, if it doesn't work out, you'll never have the opportunity that you have right now in terms of the world of entertainment or business, whatever you want to call it. You'll never have that opportunity again. In fact, it could be just the opposite because it's nasty out there. He said, I don't care. I have to do it for my country. He gave up a tremendous amount. If this didn't work, it would be a tragedy. Because, but that's what he loves. He loves the military. I never talked to him about anything else. He'd talk about the military. He'd come to see me about a soldier that was unfairly treated, and could I help? That's the only thing I virtually ever talked to him about. And I always remembered it. I've seen him many times, and I don't think I've ever had a subject on anything other than military with him. That's where his love is. And he didn't say, well, I'd like to think about it. I'd like to talk to my family. He said, not even a contest. And, you know, he was going through the roof over there. He was doing great. They have the #1 show that Saturday and Sunday with Will and Rachel. That was great chemistry. And if this didn't work out for him, it would be actually sort of tragic. Yeah.
Would you consider pardoning Eric Adams?
These answers are also interesting because, again, he has the background context on all of this. We are getting some sort of story about what's happening from the mainstream media. Some of that gets leaked out from the Trump camp, and they're reporting accurately on the things that the Trump camp has told them, which are not necessarily the things that are happening, although maybe they are. I mean, one would hope that in Donald Trump's set of guiding principles as the leader of this particular society, that the people deserve honest answers from their president. Now, because of the situation we find ourselves in, there's a limit to which he's probably able to do that 100% of the time, though he is getting the truth exposed to people one way or another, which I think is maybe an even more complicated but greater accomplishment. But that is an interesting answer on Pete Hegseth. If this doesn't work out, you're probably never going to have these opportunities again, because it would mean that he would probably crash and burn in public, or that and this is true of anybody, not Pete Hegseth in particular. You're either going to crash and burn in public and your image will be destroyed, or you're going to crash and burn with the MAGA base, in which case your public image to a large portion of the country and the ideological portion of the country where the rest of the country is headed, all of that is going to be off limits to that person to a pretty large degree. I mean, what would it take to bring back someone like who are like some of the worst people, like a Chris Christie or a John Bolton, you know, and there's some people who can't stand Mike Pence. Maybe all these people are just playing roles, but getting MAGA to like one of these TV characters again, after deciding that TV character is not suitably pro-Trump and pro the American people. I haven't seen a great example of someone's public image being rehabilitated in that way. There are plenty of candidates out there. Maybe it will happen. I could totally imagine it happening for someone like Bill Barr or Mike Pence or whoever, but you blow it and that's it. I want to see if we can get just a couple of more minutes. Maybe we'll just skip ahead. I think all these answers are so interesting. This is almost as far as I watched, and then we'll save the rest for tomorrow, and I'll go through a couple more answers here. Then we will save the rest of that for tomorrow. And if the drone answer is not here, we'll do the drones, because that seems like a good place to wrap up.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think that he was treated pretty unfairly. Now, I haven't seen the gravity of it all, but it seems, you know, like being upgraded in an airplane many years ago. At all, but it seems, you know, like being upgraded.
I want to get the full question here.
Consider pardoning Eric Adams?
Pardon Eric Adams.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think that he was treated pretty unfairly. Now, I haven't seen the gravity of it all, but it seems, you know, like being upgraded in an airplane many years ago. I know probably everybody here has been upgraded. They see you're all stars and they say, I want to upgrade that person from NBC. I'm going to upgrade him. And that would mean you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. I don't know. Somehow, I'd have to see it because I don't know the facts. I think he was treated. It's very interesting. When he essentially went against what was happening with the migrants coming in. And, he made some pretty strong statements like, this is not sustainable. I said, you know what? He'll be indicted soon. And I said it, not as a prediction, a little bit lightheartedly, but I said it. I said, he's going to be indicted. And a few months later, he got indicted. So yeah, I would certainly look at it. Yes.
Mr. President, can I ask you a question about the drones?
Ah, perfect. Here's the drones. So Eric Adams is now the new MAGA-friendly Democrat Blue City mayor because he's gone slightly anti-immigration and got indicted. Maybe he's just always been there and ready to flip, right? Anything's possible. But all of a sudden, Eric Adams is causing a whole lot of problems for all of their immigration narratives, the sanctuary city narratives, and the rest of it. Stories just blowing up in their faces. It's like he's Justin Trudeau or something.
In Syria. Are you planning on killing them when you get into office, or will you?
Well, we had 5,000 troops along the border, and I asked a couple of generals.
Wait, what the heck?
Are you planning on killing them when you?
What happened to the? Weren't we just at the drones? How did that just skip ahead?
Unfairly treated, and could I help? That's the only thing I virtually ever talked to him about, and I always remembered it.
Let's. Where are we?
I don't think I've ever had a subject on anything other than military with him.
This is Hag Seth. Jeez.
But it seems, like
crap.
being upgraded in an airplane many years ago. I know probably everybody here has been upgraded. They see you're all stars and they say, I want to upgrade that person from NBC. I'm going to upgrade him. And that would mean you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. I don't know. Somehow, I'd have to see it because I don't know the facts. I think he was treated. It's very interesting. When he essentially went against what was happening with the migrants coming in. And, he made some pretty strong statements like, this is not sustainable. I said, you know what? He'll be indicted soon. And I said it, not as a prediction, a little bit lightheartedly, but I said it. I said, he's going to be indicted. And a few months later, he got indicted. So yeah, I would certainly look at it. Yes.
Mr. President, can I ask you a question about the drones?
In Syria. Are you planning on killing them when you get into office, or will you?
Well, we had 5,000 troops along the border.
So obviously, the drone comment got cut off. The Syria comment goes first.
And I asked a couple of generals, so we have an army of 250,000 in Syria, and you had an army of 400,000. They have many more people than that. Turkey is a major force, by the way, and Erdogan is somebody I got along with great, but he has a major military force, and his has not been worn out with war. It hasn't been worn out with all of the other things. I mean, he's built a very strong, powerful army. And so we have 5,000 soldiers in between a 5 million person army and a 250,000 person army. And I asked the general, what do you think of that situation? He said, they'll be wiped out immediately. And I moved them out and I took a lot of heat. And you know what happened? Nothing. I saved a lot of lives. Now we have 900. They put some back, but 900, if you're talking about two, now that one of the sides has been essentially wiped out, but nobody knows who the other side is. But I do. You know who it is? Turkey. Okay. Turkey's the one behind it. He's a very smart guy. They've wanted it for thousands of years, and he got it. And those people that went in are controlled by Turkey, and that's okay. It's another way to fight. But no, I don't think that I want to have our soldiers killed. But I don't think that will happen now anyway because the one side's been decimated.
Mr. President.
The one side has been decimated. Is that the Bashar al-Assad side? Kind of think that he's got to be talking about someone else. Turkey's taking over. That was exactly what we said last week. That was exactly the result of the meeting between Russia, Turkey, and Iran. So what's the surprise here? None of that required any sort of military incursion. Doesn't require any steps leading up to World War III that we're already in, or maybe we're just still in World War II. So Turkey's taking over. It's just Erdogan, NATO member, right? People are commenting in the chat that Chris Christie is not a fat pig. And that's right. Chris Christie is not a fat pig.
Points in Nevada. That's supposed to be a little bit Democrat territory, but we're leading in Nevada, and a waitress came over, beautiful waitress, and I never like talking about physical. She's beautiful inside, because you never talk about a person's look, ever. You never mention it. The other day, I got very angry. Some man called Chris Christie fat, and I said, sir, and then he said he was a pig. I said, sir, Chris Christie is not a fat pig. Please remember that. He is not a fat pig. Please take it back. And the guy's looking at me like, really? No, we have to defend people. You can't call people fat. So I said about 9 times, he is not a fat pig.
Trump's hilarious. Also, while that is the subject, it is worth pointing out that Donald Trump over the weekend posted on Truth Social a really spectacular meme showing Chris Christie, who is not a fat pig, except in this picture. The drones in New Jersey are actually just delivering massive McDonald's bags to Chris Christie, who doesn't seem to be able to get his hands on enough McDonald's cheeseburgers. So congratulations to Chris Christie on not being a fat pig. And let's continue.
Are you concerned about more unrest in that region, or do you think it will calm?
Well, nobody knows what the final outcome is going to be in the region. Nobody knows who really the final. I believe it's Turkey, and I think Turkey is very smart. He's a very smart guy, and he's very tough. But Turkey did an unfriendly takeover without a lot of lives being lost. I can say that Assad was a butcher. What he did to children. You remember I attacked him with the 58 missiles, unbelievable missiles coming from ships 700 miles away, and every one of them hit that target. But I did that. That was the red line in the sand. Obama drew it, and then he refused to honor what he did. He said, if anybody goes across the red line, and Assad killed many more children after that, and Obama did nothing, but I did. I hit him with a lot of missiles. In fact, President Xi was sitting here the night he was in that dining room having chocolate cake. Remember the famous chocolate cake? But and that's when I explained what we were doing as the missiles were shot. And it was amazing as to precision, because every one of those missiles hit its target from a long distance away. Had President Obama drawn the line and where it meant something, you wouldn't have even had Russia there. But in the end, I never understood why Russia went there. They were not getting very much out of it. But now their time is taken up with Ukraine, and we'd like to get them to stop on Ukraine, and Ukraine stop also. As you know, when I went to the cathedral, which was fantastic, the job that they've done in France, and the job that Macron, Emmanuel did. He did a phenomenal job on the rebuilding of that cathedral. It's magnificent, and they did a great thing. And they had great respect for our country. They treated me, meaning I'm the country. I'm the representative of our country. And we were treated with great respect. And one of the people that came to pay his respects is, as you know, Ukraine, Zelensky. And he would like to have peace. He wants peace. Everyone's being killed. It's the worst carnage that this world has seen since World War II. I've had pictures of fields where bodies are lying on top of bodies. Looks like the old pictures of the Civil War, where just bodies are all over. Just if you saw those pictures, you'd feel more strongly about it. It's got to stop. And we're trying to get it.
They keep asking about the drones, and he keeps answering something else. That's an incredibly interesting answer, talking about how all of the missiles hit exactly where they were supposed to go. That was was that one of the back and forth, like, save face events? All the missiles got through and hit where they're supposed to go. I think that he's indicating that there was an agreement about exactly what was going to happen. It happened as agreed upon. And she was at Mar-a-Lago while it was happening. The whole chocolate cake story. He's really just laying it all right out there. He says that Erdogan has it. Turkey's wanted this for thousands of years. So they are, I don't know, reforming the Ottoman Empire or something. They are redrawing the lines on these maps. It is absolutely crucial to understand what's happening here. And gosh, man, I wonder where that line is going to be drawn, whether Turkey will move some distance into Syria. Maybe Syria just will cease being a country. And it's not that I'm not speaking out against Syria or anything. It's not that I want it to no longer be a country. Just seems like that's where we're headed, that borders are being redrawn. This is now Turkey's responsibility. He said that not too many lives were lost, considering. So much signal in everything he says, because the context is all there in his words, where when you listen to so many other people speaking about these events, there's no context whatsoever. They're just giving the company line and repeating the slogan.
Well, we're gonna see. We're going to be talking. We'll be talking to President Putin, and we'll be talking to the representatives, Zelensky and representatives from Ukraine. We got to stop it. It's carnage.
What about the fear at home of the drones?
Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think
our military knows exactly where it came from. They can know which garage it came from. If they wanted, they could go into the garage. What does that mean? Are they military drones? To the extent there are drones there. Who's launching them if they're not military? To the extent that there are drones there. But there's no doubt about it, the military knows who it is. Now, this is one of those things where you have to just play the combinations. You have to mix and match and think about it in all the directions. Is Trump being literal? Is he being euphemistic here? Is the military, the American military, aligned with the commander-in-chief, that being Donald Trump? Or is this some rogue element, some intel group, etc., aligned with the global regime? Clearly, Joe Biden's not any sort of commander-in-chief, was never a legitimate president, never seemed to have command over much of anything. So it's unlikely that it's his military. Why isn't then the military telling the commander-in-chief, quote unquote, Joe Biden? Well, there would be no contact there. Why would they tell Joe Biden what's going on? He's not the real commander-in-chief. He's not a real president. So are they choosing not to tell the American people? Why hasn't Joe Biden or the fake vice president come out and told us what's going on? Where's John Kirby? Maybe he's out there this afternoon somewhere. But still nothing. Trump makes quite clear they all know what's happening here. They're just not telling you.
I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And
who's our president? Is he speaking about himself in the third person there? Does Donald Trump know? He does know. He's making it clear that he knows, and also other people know.
And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it.
He can't imagine that the drones are coming from the enemy, because if they were, the military would blast it out. Who's the enemy in this case? Is the enemy the global regime, including the American evil twin? Or is the enemy euphemistically one of our global adversaries, the Iranian mothership, for instance? And we talked a little bit about Jeff Van Drew last week. It's important to add on to that Jeff Van Drew was, Trump at least named him as like the chair of his campaign in New Jersey. So Van Drew is a Trump supporter and close ally. One would think he's the one who brought out and made public this whole story about the mothership of Iranian drones. So is Trump talking about Iran as the enemy? Let's keep going.
Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, they happen to be over Bedminster. They're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I've decided to cancel my trip.
Have you received
So Trump just had a little fun and said, kind of tongue in cheek, I've decided to cancel my trip to Bedminster because these drones are over Bedminster. Now, did he have a trip to Bedminster scheduled? Maybe he did. I don't know. But either way, now he's just giving them a headline.
An intelligence briefing on the drones?
I don't want to comment on that.
Have you been
Do you have any reason to think they're a threat?
Two quick questions. First, on vaccines, do you want RFK Jr. to revoke any vaccines?
No, I want him to come back with a report as to what he thinks. We're going to find out a lot. We're doing two things. We're going to have tremendous cost savings will come out of this. That's a minimum. And we're also going to have, and I think, very serious discussions about certain things, whether it's pesticides. Europe doesn't use pesticides, and yet they have a better mortality rate than we do. They don't use pesticides. In fact, they use it as an excuse not to take our farm product. We spend billions and billions of dollars on pesticides. And something bad's happening. Again, you take a look at autism today versus 20, 25 years ago. It's like not even believable. So we're going to have reports. No, nothing's going to happen very quickly. I think you're going to find that Bobby he's a very rational guy. I found him to be very rational. No, nothing. You're not going to lose the polio vaccine. That's not going to happen. I saw what happened with the polio. I have friends that were very much affected by that. I have friends from many years ago, and they have obviously they're still in not such good shape because of it. And many people died. And the moment they took that vaccine, it ended. Dr. Jonas Salk did a great job. So I don't anticipate that at all. But we're going to look into finding why is the autism rate so much higher than it was 20, 25, 30 years ago. I mean, it's 100 times higher. There's something wrong, and we're going to try finding that. We're also going to find out why are we paying more than other countries. And we were in the process of doing that through transparency and other things. We were doing a good job in that first term, and we brought it down. We got the $35, all of the different things. We got, we were the ones that got all of that done. Every one of those things, we got them done. I said, I hope I win because otherwise somebody's going to take a lot of credit for what we did. But now what happens is we're gonna have a big conversation on price. Why is it that Germany and UK and other countries are paying so much more for the same box of medicine made in the same plant? Why is it that we're paying many times more? And I know the answer because our government didn't do what they were supposed to do. And what I put in place was terminated unexpectedly by the Biden administration, and they shouldn't have terminated it. It would have had a huge impact.
And
Okay?
Mr. President,
Really amazing. The book ending again. He kind of diverted the question, diverted back. I think that there's one more thing on the drone, so we'll listen to that. But he's just brought it all the way back around. That is, he's basically given those same comments that I played from the Whirlpool speech today, 4 years after signing the most favored nations executive order. There's going to be something interesting in there. And I look forward to having a conversation with my good friend John Harold about this. Maybe I'll even talk him into coming on to Hindsight 2020 tonight again. But so very interesting. Let's listen to one more, and then we will wrap it up for the day.
President, one quick question on Ukraine. You mentioned that some of the areas are already decimated. Do you believe that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia?
Well, I'm going to let you know that after I have my first meeting. But a lot of that territory, when you look at what's happened to those, I mean, there are cities that there's not a building standing. It's a demolition site. There's not a building standing. So people can't go back to those cities. There's nothing there. It's just rubble. Just like when I knocked down a building in Manhattan, which is actually, this is worse, actually, because we do it step by step. This thing has just got demolished. And by the way, in those buildings are many people. Many people were in those buildings. When they say the number in Ukraine is going to be a much higher number of death, is going to be a much higher number than you're hearing. They're big buildings. That's what I did very well. And these are very long buildings. They're 15 to 20 stories high. They're massive buildings. I was surprised at how big. And they're flattened like a pancake. 1 or 2 bombs hit them and they just collapse. And they'd say, nobody was hurt. Well, nobody knows who was in those buildings. There were a lot of people in those buildings. They're going to find that when they start doing the removal. Many more people are being killed in the Ukraine war with Russia than is being reported. And that includes soldiers. The soldiers are it's a carnage that we haven't seen since the Second World War. It's got to be stopped. And I'm doing my best to stop it. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay. So we will leave it there for today. The carnage has not been seen like this since the Second World War. So we are getting the replay there again in Ukraine, the stacks of bodies being piled up, very reminiscent of the story we are told about World War II. And I think that seems like a pretty direct allusion there. It's not difficult to draw the parallels and the comparisons. Wow. Just sneezed so hard. That's why I disappeared. I almost sneezed so hard that I traversed realms. That is why I disappeared. I'm making that up. And with that, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I will probably do one of these tomorrow. I will update online at some point in the late morning. And then Wednesday, we will do a subscriber stream. And we'll just keep plowing along and see how it goes. And seeing how it goes. Thank you all so much for hanging out. I will be back tomorrow, probably. Same reasonable time on the Same Reasonable Podcast Network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic, and Joe Biden will never be president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
Can we stop this cruel game and allow the boy to keep one shred of dignity? For God's sakes! I can't stand to see him in all this pain! You vicious bastards! Let him move in with you! Is it so bad to see somebody happy? So just let him move in! For the love of God, let the boy move in with you! Good Lord!
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com. And for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.